We are live. Welcome to another episode of Generative AI and I with Ranjani Money. Generative AI has been compared to this iPhone moment, one that has disrupted the way we communicate, bringing in historical technological change with advent of new applications and business models. Now, Gen AI, I think, is at the same space right now, and it's not really a space where there are a lot of experts. Everyone is on this learning journey, and the ones who will stay ahead are the ones who are curious and want to continue to learn. So, in this new podcast, we talk to the builders, the doers, and the leaders with one goal to help you understand and stay ahead in this new machine generated creative new world. So, with that, I'm going to jump into this episode with one of my favorite creators, thought leaders, and he's like a complete package. I'm so excited to have him on board. Jaspreet Bindra has 25 plus years of experience across business and P&L leadership, digital transformation, technology, and entrepreneurship. He's the ex-CDO at Mahindra. He's played critical roles at Microsoft and TAS. He's the author of the bestseller, The Tech Whisperer. He's doing his master in AI and ethics at Cambridge University. He's held advisory board positions at Thoughtworks, Findability Science, IDC, and Mahindra Group. He's a global keynote speaker, advisor, writer, and he has this fortnightly column I read very diligently called Tech Whisperers for Mint. He's a columnist at NDTV and he also writes for Hindustan Times, amongst others. I think you're a true spokesman for a portfolio career, JB. I'm so privileged and honored to be talking to you today. Welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Ranjani. That was one of the best introductions I heard about myself because I have my fingers in so many pies. Just to put it in 30 seconds, I'm going to keep that recording for myself. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think you do a great job. True inspiration. So, with that, why don't we start with that, right? Like, what's inspired you? You have such a brilliant trajectory. You've played a role across multiple areas of the business. So, what's inspired you to get into this interest with Gen AI specifically? How has this journey been so far? Tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. So, Ranjani, pretty much like you, I think, I've been working in and around technology for most of my career. Though I've been mostly a business person around technology, and what excites me is the intersections of business and tech and how business can use and leverage tech to grow. But of late, in the last few years, it has got these intersections have become more than just business. As technology has become central to our life in many ways, there are other intersections which have come in. Well, technology and life, technology and philosophy, technology and history, technology and sociology, technology and ethics. And it is these intersections which really, really interest me. I play in these. Why Gen AI? Well, I'll be very honest. AI is something all of us have been aware of, working in, using. And AI is older than all of us here. It was 65, 70 years back when it was named by McCarthy, one of the founding fathers of AI. But and it has always been a super powerful technology. And Andrew Ng and many others have actually compared it to electricity, right? And the thing about electricity is that you don't think about it unless it's not there. And so we don't think about AI. It's always there. If it stops, everything will stop around us. With Gen AI, and why the excitement to me and everyone else happened, isn't that, in my opinion, generative AI, specifically ChatGPT, brought out this powerful technology from the backstage to the front in people's hands. And they were like, oh, wow. And I pretty much was in Cambridge. I woke up on 1st December 2020, the morning after ChatGPT had been launched. And I saw this and I knew, as sometimes when you worked in this, instinctively that this is one of those which comes along every 10, 20 years. And so I pretty much stopped everything and started going into the innards of it. And just to complete, because coincidentally, I was doing this master's in AI and ethics. And ethics was frankly a tick mark activity before November 30th, 2020, and now it has become almost an existentialist question. And so, because of the whole technology part of it, and then all those intersections that we spoke about, is they have been turbocharged for me after generative AI has come along.
Absolutely. So much to unpack in that, JB. I like the point you called out around playing at the intersection. There's a lovely book called Medici Effect, right, where they talk about progress, genius happens at the intersection of different fields, and you are an embodiment of that. I also completely agree with your point around this being such a pivotal moment, right? You instantly know that this is different, and I love the fact that you kind of jumped into it, and you're doing it so fabulously well as well. So, kind of as a segue to that, there's a whole lot of audience which probably are still trying to understand what does this even mean, both from a tech perspective as well as like what it would disrupt. So, give us a 101 on OpenAI's ChatGPT from both of those perspectives.
Sure. So, Anthony, you're far better than me than explaining the tech perspective. So maybe, I'll leave that for you or someone who's more knowledgeable than I, but I'll try and demystify that bit of it also. You see, AI has always been super powerful, as I said. But AI, and this, when I say AI, I'm not specifically talking Gen AI. I'm talking about big AI, old AI, predictive AI, whatever way you want to call that. But artificial intelligence really, another way to think about AI was that it's applied statistics. Okay, and it was all about statistics. It's about patterns. It's about how you kind of use very powerful technologies like machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, which are all the real technologies behind below the AI umbrella. AI itself is not a technology; it's like a philosophy, and all these are the real technologies below it. And how you kind of use them to mostly predict stuff or classify stuff, or and basically how do you map patterns in largely in numbers, sometimes in words, and kind of figure out what are the outliers and what are the right patterns, and therefore basis these patterns you predict what's going to happen next, uh, many times accurately, sometimes inaccurately. The key difference in generative AI is that it is built on something which, for the longest time, we humans thought belonged only to us. And we believed that it was the one thing which separated us from every other species. In fact, perhaps one of the most brilliant man of today's age, Noam Chomsky, wrote about language as as this unique trait that human beings have. Now, the key thing in generative AI is that it's actually built on language. And therefore, the models on which generative AI is built is actually called large language models. And something like a GPT, not even, I mean, something like a GPT is actually trained on huge, vast amounts of language data, paragraphs, sentences, Reddit, Wikipedia. Okay, and basically, with that huge amount of language in its training set, it is trained to predict the next word if you give it a word, because that's how it's kind of. And so many people call it the world's most powerful autocomplete technology. It's like your Google search bar. When you write something, something else comes in its place. In fact, GPT-3, which is two generations behind the current GPT, uh, all of Wikipedia was 0.6% of its training data. All of Wikipedia. So you can imagine the huge amounts of data sets which are inside it. And so it generates, and the thing is that it's taught to generate language, and that's why it's called generative AI. Obviously, then this has its other side, because it pretty much makes up stuff as it goes along, because it's auto completing. Sometimes it doesn't have the right data, so it hallucinates through conversations. But the fun part there is, Ranjani, that so do we. We also make stuff as we go along. We also kind of don't rely on facts all the time. And that's why I think we feel so comfortable and so friendly with large language models. So really, that really is a large language model or a generative AI. There are variations to it called foundation models, etc., which I'll let it be at this point of time. But the same thing, what you do with words, you can also do with pictures. You can also do with video. And therefore, the picture generators, which we have seen like DALI or Stable Diffusion, etc. So it's still based on artificial intelligence principles, but the key difference is that it's now using language which so far wasn't there. So that's one way to look at generative AI.
I love how you deconstruct complex models, complex topics into something which laymen understand, right? I would have probably said, oh, this is discriminative, this is more generative. So I love the point around how you deconstructed that. I also like the point you shared around bias, right? I think
Hmm.
I heard this podcast where people say, oh, alignment problem is very important. We need to align AI values to human values. But then the question is, whose human values? Like, as humans, are we aligned, right? All of us have different. So, who exactly are we aligning with, right? So, I think it's way more nuanced than that. You referenced Noam Chomsky. So, I'm going to have my next question aligned to that. He wrote a really brilliant article, I thought, in terms of uh, ChatGPT and why does it exist? Because he compared it, he uses the analogy of a Xerox copier, right? You make a copy and then you make a copy of a copy and a copy of a copy until you have such a far out replica that the original isn't even, you don't even know what the original is. And I've spoken to startups where they say, you know what, because we couldn't find real data, we trained this on synthetic data, which is the outcome of the AI model. And then it stopped recognizing. It wasn't really good at recognizing the original voice, right? Because it was trained with synthetic data. That is a very real challenge which could happen. So I'm curious to understand. So should ChatGPT even exist? Should GenAI even exist? Where do you see this going?
So we are like we're jumping over the river to almost philosophy now, okay, from technology. But that's great because look, I mean, the other thing which is very interesting is that when the world started, when human beings happened, there were no scientists. Everyone was a philosopher. Pythagoras was a philosopher. Aryabhatta was a philosopher. And the philosophers who started looking at the natural world and saw trees and oceans and heavenly bodies started wondering about them, and they were called natural philosophers. And then the word for natural philosophers became scientists sometime during the era, and then from within science came the technologists. Okay, so actually when we say technology, we are really very narrow, and powerful technologies like this actually need to go up to the realms of philosophy, which is what you have spoken and what Chomsky, etc., talk about. Is that sometimes the only way to understand some of these very, very powerful either phenomenon or technology. So yes, Chomsky obviously is a pioneer in terms of talking about language. I saw a recent uh, interview of him where he's almost 98 or 99 now. He's speaking with almost like a synthesized voice, but he still remains as brilliant. And he wrote that particular article of the Xerox of the Xerox of the Xerox. And after that, actually, a couple of good other papers have come out which talk about what you said, synthetic data. So one of the fears that we have is that uh, you know this this technology is so good at creating content at hyperscale, super fast. I mean, it could kind of create as much content as all human beings have created in 100 years, possibly in a few months or maybe lesser, depending on how much compute power you use. And since these things are trained on data, going forward, would they be starting to be trained on stuff which they have only created? And so it will become like this recursive loop. And there have been experiments which have been done that by the ninth or the 10th such loop, it spits out nonsense because it's kind of there's no relationship left between the 10th Xerox copy and the beginning or the new data generated. So all of these problems exist, and there are many more, frankly. But remember one thing, Ranjani, at the end of it, this overall technology is about 4 years old, 4.5 years old, and only started really getting investments, attention, etc. about 6 7 months back. And if I wear the optimist hat, I do believe that these and some of these other problems will there'll be a lot of attention paid to these, and some brilliant people, not AIs but some brilliant people, will actually help solve this problem, like it has happened with pretty much every, I mean, when the television was invented or the radio was invented, that's not the television we see today, or the computer for that matter, or the phone. I mean, things. So I mean, there is, with what we know today, these fears exist. Is that Does that mean that we should just stop doing this? That this should not exist at all? No. Uh, if it becomes, 100 million people got it in 2 months, etc., and they've got it because it was useful to them, and now it must be a few hundred million. If it is not useful, it will die a natural death, like maybe the metaverse is. Okay, but if it is useful, it will continue. I don't think we need to stop that. And these technology problems, I think, like the ones we mentioned, will be solvable. I think the bigger problems will be the ethical problems.
Yeah, no, I love the phrase with what we know today, right? Because this is not the end. We're just still at the beginning. It's easy to forget that this is just like a less than 1 year phenomenon. Um,
I
Also,
call it GPT time for, sorry, I call it GPT time, by the way. One GPT time day equals like 1 year or something. Anyway, over to you. Yeah.
no, absolutely, absolutely. Also, big optimist, right? I truly believe that tech, when used for good, can bring in huge. It can be a true leveler. So, absolutely with you. So, before we kind of move into jobs, let's kind of close this out, right? What do you think? Could you distill what are your top principles from
Yes.
generative AI for folks who are probably
Sure.
new to this?
Sure. Yes, that's something I do believe in. Okay. My distillation or simplification process for complex technologies. So I sometimes talk about these 5 fundamental facts about generative AI. And my first one is that, look, it's called generative AI. Use it to generate. Don't use it to search, which many of us do. Shan Puri had a brilliant tweet which basically said that uh, Google is a search engine, ChatGPT is a thought engine. Okay, and that's very important to understand, because use it to generate ideas, generate pictures, generate legal briefs, generate code, generate new stuff. That's point one. Point two is that, what I like to talk about is that, and we'll come to the jobs part, but chat gpt or generative AI is not going to take your jobs, but someone using it could. And so be the guy using it rather than be the replacee rather than the replacer. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this probably in the jobs part as we go forward. The third thing that I do think is that the horizontals are interesting. And when I say the horizontals, I mean GPT, Llama, Palm, Bard, whatever, those big, massive horizontals. And I actually liken them in many ways to the cloud, because the cloud is this massive horizontal, and but what is useful are the verticals which are being created on top. And as you know, every morning you wake up, there are 10 new startups which have at least 10 new startups which have created stuff on these open APIs of these new clouds, in a sense. The reason I call it the cloud is because I guess three guys will control it. Okay, but these new clouds, in a sense, and these are the ones which are targeted towards your use cases, your business, the stuff you want to do, rather than the horizontals, which will be moderately good at everything. And that's number three. And number four, much like you said, I do believe that it's, there are many technologies which come and go, but this is one of those fundamental ones, much like the iPhone, internet. Sundar Pichai even calls it the fire, but I won't go that far. But and it will reshape big tech the way we know it. And in fact, that reshaping has already started. The very interesting Microsoft Google skirmishes. We have a new big tech called Nvidia, never used to exist before this. that reshaping has started. And fifth and final, which hopefully one day I hope will be called JB's equation or something similar, is basically that GAI is not equal to AGI. So GAI is generative AI. AGI, as we all, I guess, know by now, famously is artificial general intelligence, so-called singularity, so-called superintelligence. A lot of us, we get so amazed by what it can do. We believe that intelligence is already here. Maybe this is a path to it. People far bigger than me and more qualified than me do believe that it's a path to it, but it's not yet here. And let's not get distracted by that. Let's use it for all the great uses that it has today and will have going forward. So those are my five fundamental facts, in a sense, about on generative AI.
I love them. I love all of them. I also like your equation specifically. Uh, let's talk a bit more about the jobs part of it. There are two key sentiments I hear, JB, anytime we talk about AI and Gen AI specifically. One, oh, it's more of a toy. This is not applicable to me. It's just stuff which people do. I don't think we can use this. Right? That's one sentiment. And the other is more around, is this really going to automate my job away? Like, what's going to happen to my future? What do I need to do to stay relevant? So those are like top two things I hear. What do you think? Will
Sure.
this create jobs?
Look, neither of those two statements can are unequivocally right or unequivocally wrong. Okay, I wish life was so simple and so black and white. It isn't. Okay, what I believe with the information and data available till now is that we need to look at this through four lenses. Okay, the first lens is that yes, it will take certain jobs away, whether we like it or not. Every technology which has come has taken certain jobs away. So if you're a journalist and you summarize news articles, you know what? You're not needed anymore. Okay, or if you're a software engineer coder who does payroll management code, maybe not. Okay, and so some of these, and Goldman Sachs actually estimates from a US viewpoint that 7% of all jobs will be taken away. Okay, that's one. The second is that there will be jobs which will be zero impact. Okay, and Goldman Sachs estimates them to be around 30%. But these jobs are primarily the blue collar jobs. Okay, if you're a farmer, you're safe. If you're a construction worker, if you're a nurse, and therefore jobs of compassion, okay, are pretty much untouched. And the the thing about this tech is that it's actually hitting the cognitive jobs first. We always used to think that the poorer jobs will be taken away, the more menial jobs will be taken away. No, it's kind of going for the top straight away. Okay, and so the poorer menial jobs are actually very safe. That's number two. Number three, that's why I said 7 and 30. Number three are the jobs which will be created. And there's no number here because it's 7 months or whatever number of months. We have no clue. Uh, However, if we think history is a guide, every single tech since the spinning jenny, the steam engine, has actually created more jobs than it has destroyed. It has destroyed jobs, but net, it's always created more. The Indian IT revolution would not have happened without the computer. And we, actually, in this country, were protesting against computerization, taking away jobs. And already prompt engineers, well, AI ethicists, etc., new jobs coming in. How many? We don't know. History, if it's a guide, lots more than the jobs taken away. Fourth and final, and which is the 60% number, the rest 60% number in the Goldman Sachs report, is where the jobs will be impacted. So remember, you have to distinguish between jobs and tasks. So what basically a job consists of, your job might consist of 200 tasks. And there have been some amazing academic work done where a job of an accountant or a CEO or whatever has been broken down into hundreds of tasks, and how each task will it be, impacted or not. And so 60% of jobs will have tasks impacted. And how much percentage depends on the industry. Okay, which that you're in. If you're in banking, probably a lot more than if you're in defense or shipping or something like that. And here is where the interesting part is that now here you have a choice that if generative AI is coming and impacting this, do you use it, embrace it, and use it to become better, or do you kind of resist it and someone else uses it and becomes better than you? And that's why my thing about AI will not take your jobs, but someone using AI will. So if you're a software engineer, another guy, software engineer, another person who uses it becomes a 10x engineer. Okay, and you are not as good as that person, and your job gets taken away. Similarly, I want to end, Ranjani, this particular section by this, which I never ever do any talk or presentation without this quote by uh, a legendary software engineer called Kent Beck, who wrote Extreme Programming, among other things. And he kind of has this tweet out which says that so far I've been reluctant to try ChatGPT for my work. And today I overcame that reluctance and tried it. And now I know why I was reluctant. And then he says that 90% of my skills have gone down to $0, but the value of the remaining 10% has gone up 1000x. I need to recalibrate. And that's what we will all need to do with this. And if we do recalibrate, we'll actually end up becoming far better workers, hopefully much more productive, hopefully more vacations, 4-day weeks, therefore, okay, than we were so far.
I love that expansive view. And truly, like you said, this is not a zero sum game, right? I think there will be, to your point, tasks which would get automated, and rightly so. Every new advent of tech has brought in that. Right? And that would allow folks to be probably more productive in areas where they could usually bring in what is uniquely human. It reminds me of this book called World Without Work, a future where work in itself could be questioned. Do you really need to work, or could you get to a state where that is more optional? Clearly, a lot of changes happening, but you referenced IT sector specifically. So, getting back to that, that's been a foundational shift, especially for a country like ours. And many people are curious about how will that change? How will AI, GenAI, specifically disrupt IT, ITES? Your perspectives there.
I'm fond of saying that the big irony is that generative AI has turned upon its creators. Okay, and so the industry which actually created this is probably, at this point of time at least, the most impacted by it. Along with other creative industries, but the creative industries are not so big, especially in our country. But the tech industry, IT industry is massive. Okay, and everyone we know is kind of saying, okay, how do I kind of reduce my IT costs? How do I kind of whatever? Again, pretty much going back to what I was saying about jobs in general, the same thing will be true specifically for IT with some nuances. So the low end IT jobs will go away. They have been, frankly, going away, Ranjani, for a while. Okay, they've been either going to lower cost countries, okay, or they have been getting automated by other technologies, robotics, RPA, etc., for example. Okay, and so it's not going to be like that. All those jobs were safe, and now with this, it's going to go. Having said that, this obviously has the power to kind of take it one step ahead. And here's again where we have to figure out what we should do. Now, I believe that it can actually be a very big net positive for the ITES industry, especially in India, for three reasons. Okay, and reason number one is that I believe that the uh, demand for IT is infinite. The demand for software is infinite, literally. You go to 100 companies today and ask them the one reason why their stuff is slowed down, new product launches, more efficiency, something, or new system. Always the bottleneck is IT, always. Okay, and so is there a way, therefore, and that these bottlenecks can be debottlenecked now at a much faster rate, and more and more new stuff can be done. The way software is eating the world, and the demand for software is infinite, and here we have an opportunity to make every engineer, I exaggerate a little bit, but every engineer what was called a 10x engineer, what everyone searches for, because The other 9x could be given by help from this, augmented by this technology. So, you know, if you look at it that way, you can actually do 10 times more work rather than have 1/10 more people. Okay, in that sense. That's reason number one. Reason number two is our we have reached a stage in this country, and I'm focusing on India right now, where all our big IT companies have almost the entire Fortune 500 as their customer base. If you kind of take the top five, top 10 IT companies, almost the entire Fortune 500, okay, minus maybe a little bit in Japan, a little bit in China, are a part of our customer base. And so we already have these existing relationships with these Fortune 100, Fortune. Each of these Fortune 500 firms wants to do stuff in GenAI. And who's better placed than people who are already sitting in your company with already built relationships, knowing your systems, and saying, okay, fine, on top of the ERP that we implemented, what is the stuff that we can do? But the IT companies in India will have to grasp that opportunity. That's number two. Number three and final is that I believe as a country, we are uniquely positioned because of the entire digital public goods in the India stack. Okay. And the sheer amounts of data. We've had a wave one of startups building stuff on top of it. I think with thinking of generative AI literally as another layer on it, if in some way, you know, if there was a way to use that amazing amount of data and, you know, and now we have a tool which probably is more powerful and less expensive than every other tool which was there. Today, we haven't really done much with that data, frankly. Okay, and now there's an opportunity to do so much with it and leapfrog. So I think for these three reasons, I'm super optimistic. But we have obviously have to make the right moves and do the right things.
So the pie is definitely bigger. There's room for more. We have the talent, we have the channels, so therefore we can already expand. And then, as you rightly called out, we have the digital stack, we have the data. All of this puts us potentially at an advantage rather than a disadvantage. I love the flip side, which you actually converted into a positive. So, fabulous answer. So I need to, before we conclude, talk about a topic which you are doing a master's on, AI ethics. You called out that earlier this was more of a checkbox item. It has become fundamental and so crucial in the way we look at AI today. What do you think are the most significant ethical concerns surrounding generative AI, and how do we address them?
It's an ethical minefield, Ranjan. 2 years back when I started doing this course, we used to say that the horse seems to have already left the stable. Now, why are we kind of now? Not only has the horse left, we can't even see the horse. It's so fast and it's so far. Many times I compare this technology with nuclear technology, and 100 years, a few decades back, when it burst upon the scene, there were both sides. Again, people were widely optimistic, clean power, green energy, etc., unlimited energy. And on the other side, there was obviously its very horrific, destructive potential. Hiroshima happened. Everyone came to know of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima came to know of the destructive potential. The world got together. While it was a unipolar world, it got together. It was easier. Created a framework, IAEA, Non-Proliferation Treaty, which can sometimes be argued was favoring some nations, not favoring some nations. But still, until then, we, touch wood, haven't had another Holocaust, okay, of Hiroshima kind. Now, I've always worried. And now, AI is similar. Okay, it has both sides. It can solve things for us, solve global warming, nuclear fusion, creates amazing hyper-personalized medicine, etc., healthcare, education. So much, it could change for the better. But on the other side, because of its very, very clearly big issues like fake news, big issues like creating fake news, influencing elections, biases, plagiarism, sometimes superintelligence, creation of superintelligence, all those dark sides are there. The interesting part is that in the nuclear part, while we clamped down because we feared stuff, maybe we didn't do the right balance, because if we had allowed the energy to proliferate, the technology, and if we were like France, 40-50% of our global power was being generated by clean energy, nuclear energy, maybe we would not be close to the climate apocalypse today. Okay, because that's what fed into the climate as CO2 emissions, etc. And while we saved a particular kind of extinction, maybe we are heading towards another kind of extinction. And so we must learn from that. And in Hiroshima, the G7 met coincidentally in Hiroshima. They had Ukraine, they had China, and they had AI on their minds. And so hopefully that's the Hiroshima moment. So look, the perils of this are well known. I'm not going to go into details of each one of the bias related, plagiarism related, fake news related, environmental related. This is a hugely polluting technology, large language models. Uh, uh, and But I also see that the world, and literally the world, from the top political powers to the top technologists, scrambling to figure out how do we regulate, how do we build guardrails, is the first technology ever, in my opinion, where the creators are saying regulate us. Right? And so that's a form of hope in a sense, and therefore that we would do it broadly the right way and learn from social media, which we did not do the right way, for example. And Otherwise, I think it could lead to more problems for us and maybe extinction events for us earlier than we thought.
Mm, mm. Technology inherently is good or bad. It depends on the intention of the creator and the user, as you call them. You referred to singularity, so I need to ask you this, JB. It's also a topic I think about a lot. There was this book called Old Man's War I read a long time ago, which talks about older man, right? When you turn 75, you take the consciousness and put that into a new body. And then the question the protagonist asks is, who am I? Am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I the consciousness? Like, who am I, right? So I think a lot about like, what is consciousness? And do we get there? Will AI get there? Will AI become conscious? I know it sounds very philosophical, but I thought that's a good way to end the session as
Sure.
well. So, what do you think? Is AI going to be conscious?
Okay, there's so much I can speak about this, but let me tell you a very quick abridged story, okay, about Prometheus, who in the Greek mythology teamed up with Zeus, who was the god, the, the chief god in Greek mythology, to create a new plaything, which they called man at that time. So it included woman, but man. That's kind of, it's ancient Greek. So, uh, and they had created animals, they had created birds, they all did their stuff, but they wanted to create a new plaything, and they wanted that plaything to be harmless. And so they kind of didn't give us claws or wings or massive lion-like strength or whatever, but they made us upright, okay, so that we could worship them and offer gifts to them, etc. And they were very happy they created us. But Zeus made Prometheus promise one thing, saying that never ever give it that spark, don't give it the fire. I mean, which would make this thing like us, and then they would no longer need us. Yeah, Prometheus, however, was a little, he was kind of, he felt bad for us, and he kind of went down to Mount Olympus, stole fire, which is actually the spark of consciousness, okay, and gave it to us. And Zeus was livid, and Zeus was right. After a period of time, we don't need the gods anymore. Okay, we just kind of, make caricatures of them. We think we are much more superior. Now, in that sense, Ranjani, we have created this thing called ChatGPT, this plaything, okay, this thing which we believe we can control. And we get amused by it, and we kind of, it does our bidding, and everything. And maybe one day someone will figure out how to give it that Promethean spark, and then maybe that won't need us anymore, and the whole story will be played out. I, however, believe, now this was just a Greek story, but I do believe that the way we are going, and it's not only me, Jeffrey Hinton believes, and Sam Altman believes, and a bunch of others believe that the way it's going, at some point of time, we would reach this narrow singularity moment. I call it narrow because at a point of time when it will be more intelligent, just in pure IQ, okay, than humans. What kind of AGI would that be? What kind of intelligence that would be? We don't know. Sometimes we think that it's already more intelligent, but we just don't understand the intelligence, like we don't understand octopus intelligence, for example. Okay, and so one day it will, and you know, hopefully we would still have the kill switch, and you know, we would still be able to control it, etc. But will it ever be conscious, like the Promethean fable? Something I don't believe in. Okay, because my view is, and I'm not so educated in this, but my view is that frankly we don't understand our own consciousness. We don't, you know, we don't know our brain at all. And if we don't understand our own, how are we going to build it for something else? Unless it spontaneously happens through some emergent tech which people are talking about. But and if so, therefore, having conscious AI, and it's called the hard problem of philosophy to understand consciousness. What is it? No one knows it. Uh, uh, and so I don't think we are going to get into that Promethean moment of consciousness, but we are definitely going to have some kind of higher intelligence.
I love the answer. I love the story. I'm going to wrap this up and let you go. But concluding thoughts, JB, in terms of your recommendation or advice to anyone starting off in this space, what do you think they should do to continue to stay relevant?
Be curious, be experimentative. Look, when search came, for example, or even before that, Microsoft Excel, I mean, I don't think many of us needed training sessions for it. Okay, you don't need training sessions how to use Google or WhatsApp. You need it for higher order Excel, but for basic stuff you don't. But there were some people who never learned because they would not be curious about it, or they would not kind of play around with it, etc. So I think this tech, one of the reasons it's on fire, it's is that it's very intuitive, it's very easy to use, and it allows you to play, and it allows you to create, and creativity is our, you know, it's something we are good at. And so I think if we just read about it, play with it, experiment with it, don't resist it, and just therefore be curious. I don't think we need any Coursera course, or you know, unless, and I'm talking about general population, I'm not talking about software engineers, etc. You don't need a Coursera to figure out how to do this, or you know. So I don't have any specific course to obviously read my articles, which are always good. Okay, but beyond that, I don't think I'm going to you know have anything specific. But embrace it, because as I said, someone who uses it will replace someone who doesn't, and so you better be the person who uses it.
Absolutely. Do not look for that silver bullet, that course which will get you started. Just start using it. Be curious and embrace it. Lovely thought to close the day, James. I love that conversation. I love the analogies and the stories you brought with you. Great. I hope that the audience took away as much as I did. So thank you again for your time, and meet folks again in another episode of Generative AI and I. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Great discussion.